Welcome to the Everyday Sniper. You got Frank from Sniper's Hide here, and we got an interview with you. I talked to you guys about this a little earlier in the week. I have Jeff Huber on the line from Zero Compromise Optics there. Welcome to the Everyday Sniper podcast. Jeff, say hi to everybody out there.
Thanks, Frank. Thanks for having me on the show, and happy to be here.
Excellent. Now, you and I go back a long time. People may not know this. We used to hang back in the day with SHOT Show and everything. We used to hang out at the in the booth pick room. Some people may not realize that you had to go in like on Tuesday and sit in a room for a while when they called your number in order to bid on your booth space. And at the time, when you worked for Night Force back then, you were the one that had to go and sit there and wait for your booth. So, yeah, we go back quite a long time.
Yeah, that was a long time ago. I mean, I've been doing it since 91, and I'm not sure it was too long after that when I met you, and we were doing that exact thing back in the SHOT Show torture room days.
Yep. And it was, for me, and it's kind of funny because it was always intimidating, like, oh, there's Jeff from Night Force. But I used to always sit next to you on purpose to try to kind of get to know you because, there was always that respect for the optic and what you were doing and all the work you guys were doing there. So kind of my way was to, hey, let's go sit over there next to that guy and start to learn about optics and the different things because it was pretty small back then.
Yeah, it's funny. I never thought about it that way, I guess, but yeah, flattering. Yeah, it was small. Everything was a lot different back in those days.
Really, because a lot of what I used to do, some of my education, and this might crack you up a little bit, but was John Williams Sr. with U.S. Optics because they had gotten onto Sniper's Hide before pretty much anybody at the time. Right. And so I was hanging out with them, so that kind of was my first, jump into any kind of, optical education. And from there, it sort of takes off and you start to meet people in the industry and get the different viewpoints. Because I don't know, maybe you can kind of explain some mindset in how different companies look at the optics. Because back in the day, you were the second focal plane guys and you were pretty adamant with that. That, you were building second focal plane scopes and there is that benefit. So maybe Give people your take on the second focal plane versus the front focal plane and where those decisions brought us to where we are today.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, there's been so much change. I mean, you look at it way back then in the early 90s or so, and first focal plane, well, European scopes in general. I mean, back then you didn't have your tactical European scopes. I mean, maybe back then Hensel was around. I don't even know, but they weren't known in the United States, that's for sure. And, Schmidt and Bender didn't even have a tactical line back then. I think their first semi-tactical scope was their 4-16 by 50 with that brand new side wheel focus parallax, and that was first focal point. But I think the big deal back then is the reticle manufacturing technology wasn't there to really get the subtensions that allowed it to be be used as a super precise or target scope or what we know now as a tactical scope, PRS, that sort of thing. So that was a kind of limiting factor. A lot of other things were limiting as well, there wasn't a whole lot of the PRS type shooting. That wasn't the predominant sport. It was really bench rest, F class, a lot of varmint hunting and various paper punching type competitions. And so second focal plane was the key because you could actually have reticle subtensions, or the amount of area that the reticle covers at distance was much finer, and then you could maybe an eighth of an inch or even less on second focal plane, where first focal plane back in the days, hell, you were talking a third of an inch or a quarter of an inch. I mean, something just brutal, the first.
Yeah.
Unless you were shooting at something the size of a person or something that big, dare I say that, but then it really wasn't. It didn't help for any sort of real accuracy. And
yeah, I mean, you were looking at a reticle almost as big as a click value. And so, again, that was it. If you think about it, too, other than the paper punching side of it, in F-class, today had to reduce the size of their X-ring. Their X-ring was a minute, and it was minute a man, and that was the X-ring. And so, then we always talked about minute a man with the military side, but then, minute of elk. So, so everything was so much bigger. And then you saw that turn, like you said, on the tactical side competition where we're at today to the front focal plane. And it allowed us to be more dynamic. But, I mean, like, you and I used to speak about in the past quite a bit. It's a little harder to make those scopes as well as a second focal plane. That they tend to be a little bit more forgiving, a little bit more bulletproof in the second. So, maybe kind of touch on a manufacturing side.
Sure. I mean, and that's true. To this day, it's true. I mean, to make a first focal plane scope, how do I word it? To make it as good as a second focal plane, assuming they're all the same quality level, it is more difficult. It takes more time, more energy, more expense from the optical engineer and everything. Because the bottom line is that in a first focal plane, your reticle is in the front of the scope. So and the image is formed, has to be formed and completed, basically, corrected, if you will, when it gets to that reticle. So in a first focal plane, you have half as many lenses to correct any aberrations or chromatic aberrations, distortion, resolution, anything. You're working with half the amount of lenses to produce as good of an optical picture in a first focal plane. Now, a second focal plane, you can continue using lenses to eliminate or adjust for undesirable effects all the way until it gets to the reticle in the eyepiece or near the eyepiece, back of the director. So, yeah, second focal plane, a lot more lenses not a lot more lenses in the scope. They're both equal as far as the amount of glass pieces in each scope, but in the second focal plane, you have a lot more lenses that you can work with. The optical engineer can work with in designing the system where you can get rid of these undesirable effects. And first focal plane too, if you build a scope right, you should have a strong first and second focal plane position, not just one or the other. A lot of second focal plane scopes, they don't have you can't just put a reticle in that first focal plane position. Every scope has a first and a second focal plane, but if the optical designer didn't design it to utilize both focal planes, first and second, then it's only good in one. So again, second focal plane's easier if you're not looking to make it first focal plane or ever use the first focal plane. Our scopes have strong first and second focal plane positions, so we can put a reticle in either, really, although we only make first right now.
Right, and you guys, I mean, the running the zero compromises and stuff it's just been such a great experience. You're definitely up on the tier one side of things. Your packages that are put together. I've been gravitating more towards the 4-20, which would be considered in sort of the ultra short range, where it's a smaller scope versus the 5-27, which is more of your not normal size but full size optic. Both of them have been fantastic. And then I know you guys just came out with the new reticle. So, because why don't you talk about like the process that you used and how that might be different today? Because you went around to PRS shooters, to me, to dealers, and you almost crowdsourced the design of a reticle, and talk about that process versus back in the day where you said, this is the reticle we're giving you, here you go.
Yeah. I think I've always went around and talked or listened to people, but not quite so much as what we do today. And in listening, there's a lot more competition there than there is today. When you design a reticle, we just like everything in our scope, we really want to make sure we maximize what the majority of the public wants, but reticles are very difficult to please everyone. It's like colors. So,
yeah, picking your favorite color, right?
Yeah. Our Impact 1, our Impact 2, and our newly to be released here in just another week or so, I hope, will be our Impact 3. All those reticles come from a lot of history and with Nick Gebhardt, myself, and other people, yourself, people at Mile High, people at CS Tactical, and a variety of others, and shooters. And we listen to everybody, and we try to take all that information and not make a reticle that's this jack of all trades, but they come up with something very, very specific and that we feel is on the cutting edge of what people are doing in the sport today. So,
and
as far as the reticle manufacturing, that's a bit of a different subject, and that current manufacturing process would definitely allow you to get finer and finer in subtension. Where it used to always be. A lot of people think that these glass etch reticles were laser etched, and that's not the case. I mean, they're chemically etched. It's like a mask, like a negative, and they're done in a chemical process where that etching is cut into the glass or burned into the glass, if you will, chemically. Now there are new technology that's plasma, and this plasma not only creates a sharper, more square-edged groove, if you will, on the reticle and the glass, but it allows the manufacturer to even get finer, to a finer micron level, where they get down to, if you want to talk in mils, instead of 0.04 mil, we're talking down to 0.01 even. So when you get the scopes now with these wide zoom ratios, the challenge is having a reticle that you can see at low power and isn't so heavy or doesn't look like telephone poles at high power. So there's always the challenge of not only the reticle subtension, but then how you apply it with the zoom range or magnification of the scope you've designed. So.
And I don't want to. I'm going to get into the zoom range in a sec, but I want to kind of stick on a reticle for a minute. With the new Impact 3, you kind of created this funnel at the top, and I know it's because it's distinct looking. It's brought a lot of attention to that reticle, and I want to talk these rapid engagements because these are kind of working, and I know kind of working with some of the Army guys and the military side of things, and I've had some calls come into me over the last 3 months where this rapid target engagement where you can flash mill something and kind of have a number. There's the way they do it within sort of the tremor ecosystem with the lines above. Those scattered lines are designed to put a target in there and to say it's X number of mils below. So if you have a 10 gun and you have 6, it's like, okay, that's 600 yards, and then the 6 from 4, you use your 4 for your dope, is kind of like one side of it gives you the range, the other side of it gives you the dope to hit it with. And so what was sort of like you going into that funnel? Was it a similar request or direction that you saw people going to? Because it seems like it's a speed thing where we are gravitating towards speed. But talk about that reticle design and that funnel part of it. Well,
normally I've been incredibly involved in or handled the development of most all the reticles in my whole career. With the Impact 3, I got to say that's really been Nick Gebhardt's brainchild, especially the funnel. So I may not be the best person to speak on the exact reason why he designed it or the questions you're asking, because I haven't worked with training military or worked with the military for quite some time now. I used to heavily, but so what I do is I've done more of the proofing of the subtensions and fine tuning of the concept of the reticle, and then of course I work with you on the help validating what we think the ultimate, what the customer wants, what the shooter wants. But so I'm a little bit at a disadvantage to give you a full breakdown of how the military would say utilize the funnel, other than just what you mentioned. It is very easy, and it's like the funnel design's been around for eons. I mean, you go back to the early European Cold War type scopes, had that design. I mean, Leupold actually developed a Mark III or M3 back in the 80s that had a funnel type reticle that was utilized for drop and ranging for the 50 cal. So I mean, it's very, very easy to use it. It's relatively accurate. I mean, in our testing that we've done so far with the laser rangefinder and the funnel system in our M3 Impact 3 reticle, it was very, very accurate. We're getting plus or minus 15 yards or so, depending at the distances that it's laid out for.
Designed.
For the right now the funnel